Good, all good. But if you want to start and introduce kind of Soul Youth, and then I'll take it from there.
Hi guys, welcome to So Collective Youth Pop Up with Paul Willis. Um,
Yeah,
sorry.
we got the youngest of the youth in the building.
Yeah, sorry. Welcome to this workshop with Paul Willis. Hope you guys enjoy with So Collective Youth.
Awesome. And I'll go ahead and take it from here. And I appreciate you for organizing and for setting this up, and appreciate everyone else for being here. My name is Paul Willis. I have many jobs, many roles. I'm a hip hop artist, and I do spoken word poetry as well. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. And I've spent the past 15 plus years working in education, youth development, social justice spaces. So I'm really excited to be here to share this information. And I'm really happy that this session is being recorded for those folks who couldn't make it tonight. What I'm going to do is share a little bit about Wonderland, the project overall. There's an album, a film, an ebook, and so much more that has happened in this process. Things I couldn't have imagined or dreamed of when I got started. And it's exciting to kind of be in this place now, to be able to grow it. And hopefully, what folks will take away from the session is how to take their creative ideas from the initial kind of seed of that idea, and watch it grow into something really beautiful and special. So I hope that this inspires you and gives you some new and creative ways to think about how to expand your creative projects. So what we'll do in just the front part of this session is we'll go through a couple slides. I'll walk you through some of the behind the scenes stuff about how the album came together, how the film came together, etc. And then we'll see it. We'll get a chance to watch 12 minutes of it. We won't watch the whole thing. The whole thing is 33 minutes long. And then I'll share with you just some of the things that have happened since the release of the project. And then I'd love to hear what folks are working on creatively on the other side of the call. And then let's talk about how we can grow and expand on some of those ideas based on some of the things that you've heard me talk about today. So I'm excited to meet everyone, and let's go ahead and get started. So now I'm going to share my screen, and we'll get going. So right now, we're going to look at a series of slides, and this is the first slide. So again, Wonderland is the project. There's an album, there's a film, and there's so much more. But let's talk about behind the scenes. I'm going to start with just who I am. So in order to understand the project of Wonderland, what I want to do is share that I was not born and raised in Sacramento. I was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. My grandmother raised me. I'm the middle child of six. There's no father's name on my birth certificate, and my mom really battled drug and alcohol addiction from when I was born. I was born in '87. It's the height of the crack cocaine era, and she struggled with that for decades of her life. So our relationship hasn't always been the greatest. When I was in middle school, I was attending this Jesuit independent day school. I took kids from the inner city, and these are kids who were showing promise on test scores, and then prepared them for private day and boarding schools up and down the East Coast. And boarding schools mean something different out here in California. I just want to share that. I know that in the news recently, in Canada and other places, there have been some atrocities with the native and indigenous population at boarding schools and residential schools, etc. But back east, boarding schools are where like the wealthy and the elite send their kids. So I went to a school that was like really expensive. The tuition was more than most colleges at the time, and it prepared me to get into a whole bunch of different colleges that I applied for. Um, it was a primarily white institution, predominantly white institution, and so was my college. And I remember being in school, kind of looking around, and while I was taking a full course load, working 3 jobs, running an after-school program, coaching a basketball team, running an intramural sports program, I realized that the work that I wanted to do was right there in my community. And I wanted to jump in and get some real world experience. I had a couple professors who really changed my life when I was in college, and I dropped out. I left school because I wanted to see the kind of impact I could have in a real world setting, and not this bubble that my schools felt like I was in. Um, and really, that started my career. 15 years later, being in education, nonprofits, youth development spaces. I've done a lot of event planning and management. Now I'm doing a lot of leadership training for corporations and nonprofits here in Sacramento, and in other places in the country. And as I've been growing as a professional, this hip hop spirit and energy really hasn't left my side. I've released 11 albums, helped start a music company here in Sacramento with my best friend, who's now a school board member in Sacramento City Unified School District. My crew, ZFG, we mentor young artists, and we work to create these social justice and community spaces here in Sacramento where art and activism really mix. And when I first came to Soul Collective at the open mic, I realized how powerful it was to have a space where there are people who looked like you, who shared your experience, and who were growing something that was really special. And I wanted to be involved. So my background has really blended my worlds together in some really powerful ways. It helped make my transition to Sacramento really smooth by helping me get connected and involved with all the things that were happening in the community, and it helped me leverage the skills that I was developing as a working artist into other spaces and create really special experiences for folks in nonprofit and corporate settings. So that's a little bit about me and who I am and what I do and the whole nine. Let me tell you more about the music because that's where this project started. So this album took 3 years to create, and it really started with the writing. And Wonderland as a concept, um, I wanted kids from my neighborhood to have the freedom and permission to dream about life outside of their neighborhood. For me, moving to California, that's unheard of where I come from. Literally everything I needed was within a quarter of a mile from my grandmother's house in this neighborhood in Boston called Jamaica Plain. Predominantly Latino neighborhood with Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Cubans. So the cultures are very different there than they are here in California. And I wanted to capture that because my neighborhood, since I've been out here over the past decade, really 15 years, has experienced a lot of gentrification. And so whenever I go back to visit, some of my neighbors are no longer there. My friends and family who have lived in the neighborhood for decades, they're not there anymore. The stores are changing. Just the overall feel, the vibe of the neighborhood has shifted. And I wanted to really capture and honor what those experiences were like. One, because I get really nostalgic when I rap and reflect on my experiences. But the other part was, I think that sometimes our cities, when they change, they don't do that kind of change and investment or reinvestment into communities with the people who are there in mind, right? It's like there's a neighborhood that's thriving with all these different cultural elements and people and business owners and the like. And when people kind of start to see, oh, it's happening there, there's opportunity there, folks will move in, create the high price condos and everything, just make that neighborhood really unaffordable for people to live there anymore. So I didn't want those stories to be lost. I didn't want those memories, the people to be lost. I wanted to put that into the music. So there's a bunch of neighborhoods all over the city, and every song on the album has a different name of a train or a bus station that really represents these different neighborhoods where I grew up. And so these songs have a strong connection with the meaning and the experiences from those particular neighborhoods. There's also the tie-in conceptually with the idea of Alice in Wonderland. You know, Alice was allowed to dream up that entire movie. You know, a lot of folks they, you know, they think about the Cheshire Cat, the Queen of Hearts, and all of those different characters, the Mad Hatter. But at the end of the movie, you know, Alice was woken up next to the tree stump, and was able to return to her normal life. And oftentimes, you know, kids from neighborhoods like mine don't have that opportunity to dream, and really see a future for themselves outside their neighborhood. And that's what I wanted to share with folks was that, you know, I've been away from the community for a while, and I've been building some really amazing things here in Sacramento, but I wanted to share, you know, my experience with young people back home and young people here in Sac to let them know that, hey, like life is bigger than your block, right? There's more for you out there. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to like leave the hood or escape the hood. But it means that when you go out, you travel, you see the world, you have those experiences, you come back to the soil, you know, where your seed was grown, and then you cultivate that soil so that it becomes a place where others can really flourish as well. Um, so the recording and the mixing process for this album, I worked exclusively with like live bands and musicians who like played live instruments and sampled themselves. So I didn't have any issues with royalties or copywriting or anything like that. I recorded in 3 different studios with experienced engineers. That photo that you see on the screen there, that's a photo of one of the studios that I recorded the album in. All in all, everything cost over the span of 3 years on just the music side alone was $5,800 over 3 years. $1,000 from that came from some grant money, but the rest of that came out of pocket. So all the beats, all the sessions, I paid for all the features and exclusive ownership rights over the music. I paid for all of that, and that's kind of the cost of an album like this. There are other albums where people have spent less money. There are albums where people have spent more money. But I just wanted to give people a realistic view of like what it takes to get an album like this done. Um, I want to tell you now about the film and how that came to be. So the funding for the film came from this amazing group of Black women that you see here. They started the Black Artist Fund. It's now called the Black Artist Foundry because they've grown in their development of programming and offerings to the community. So they're the Black Artist Foundry now. But I applied for a grant and I won $1,000 to help me finish the album. And when the second round of funding came around, I had applied. And while I got rejected, the feedback that I got in the grant process from these women really connected me and got me this next opportunity to get a different grant for $10,000 to make the film. And it was just a really beautiful and amazing connection. They understood what my vision was and where I was trying to go. They knew that I might have to make a couple of adjustments for this other source of funding, but it wasn't going to take away from the music and the mission behind the entire project. And again, like being grounded in this mission of connecting my story from my Boston community with the Sacramento community and their story, um, taking the dreams, the hopes, the challenges, the woes. I just wanted to prove that like all of these things, like we're all interconnected, right? Like our humanity is really tied together. And so having a really strong and supportive team that was connected with funding opportunities and wanted to support Black artists in the creation of their work, that was huge in getting this done. And it wasn't just me, like I wasn't the only person, right? Like the music started with me, and yeah, I paid for everything, but I couldn't have completed the album or the film on my own. I needed a really visionary team behind the lens, and I needed somebody to score the film and teach the music to my band. And I needed locations to shoot, community members to interview. Um, Really, it took an entire village of people. There were over 25 people who were involved in the process of creating this film. And really that idea of teamwork, making the dream work, was never more at the forefront than in a project like this. The other thing that was really important with the film was this idea of community. And, I wanted to make sure that the community that I had been working in, this community in CV Circle, really had a voice of its own. And I'm an outsider who was working in this community for 5+ years. We're kind of a forgotten community in the area of Land Park in Sacramento, but because of housing segregation, racist housing policies, and a bunch of economic decisions over the decades that have really left this community without very many resources, I knew I didn't want to speak for the community, but I wanted to, give my platform over to this community to help elevate and bring awareness to their voices and their stories. So all of those pieces being said, I created the album and the film during the pandemic. There's an ebook that comes with like lyrics, not just stuff from the album, but from stuff from like previous albums in my discography. And it was a way to kind of visually show people the lyrics that I was talking about. I wanted people to experience the art differently. I believe that, just going to a hip hop show or concert is not the only way to experience hip hop. You can see it in a coffee table or in your regular reading. You can see it in theaters and on a big screen or in a documentary style. You can hear it on an album and stream it everywhere. For me, the experience of Wonderland was just as important as the quality in the music and in the film. But I really want to show y'all what that experience was like. So what I'm going to do is play you 12 minutes of Wonderland so that you get a chance to see it and experience it for yourselves. In the film, what you'll see my live band playing some songs and performing. You'll see some dancers, you'll see poets, you'll see community educators and activists and parents who are speaking on issues that are important to them. So I want you all to see this so that you understand that, your creative idea might start in a particular place, but when you allow the community to collaborate and invest in you as an artist, then there's an amazing opportunity to have it be something that's more, that's part of something bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and play you this video clip right now, and then we'll come back together and discuss it some more.
There were places in my city I never got to explore. The old pages in a book that were tattered and torn. I try to pick the roses and remember the thorns. I'ma die without knowing how I was born. This is for my sisters. I love y'all to death. You brought me so much joy and I brought you so much stress. Kai, Sharif, and Liz taught me how to forgive. And in my darkest moments showed me how to live. For my brothers, Patrick and Kyron. 4 Seasons was the illest track to rhyme on. P, you always been a shoulder to cry on. And K, you know I want you to fight on. To my aunties, nephews, and nieces, I miss all of y'all to pieces. If I was rich, I'd fly every weekend. No, I love you and miss you the deepest. To my mom, you know it haven't been easy, but I'm glad we spoke the other evening. And my wife got the text you sent her. She loves you and I'm glad you met her. To my friends back home, you're my backbone. I love your stories, can't wait till we back home. You got married, started a business, shit, me too. I wish I had more time to see you. To my city, I love the gifts you gave me. Like when my OGs at the park would save me. Biking everywhere seemed crazy, but I learned to love it more strangely. I can't recognize my city from the TV. I met my first blonde in high school. I can't imagine life without seeing me. Funny how it all changed since I moved. I wanna see it all back the way it was. But rose glass is exactly what nostalgia does. Things weren't as perfect as I thought it was. I had a lot of loss and a lot of love. I had a lot of pain and a lot of joy. I became a man when I was a little boy, making adult decisions as a youth. Common Square taught me a lot about the truth. Tell my auntie I'm coming back for some jerk chicken and more stories about my mom that I've been missing, and tales from the island that I've never been. I hope to go with Devin and Uncle Ken, and Brent can join and bring the boys. Family reunion in Jamaica will be a story. The close of one book and we start another. We got the rest of the world to discover. Yeah.
In Sacramento and many places across the world, low-income communities have disproportionately experienced health, housing, and job insecurity during the pandemic. When the challenges of COVID-19 are compounded by the additional stressors that low-income communities face, then the solutions for COVID relief are often not enough to meet the need equitably. It is the responsibility of hip-hop artists to not only speak up for the marginalized, but to elevate the voices of those communities by sharing their platforms to create meaningful change. Telling people to hope and dream is not enough. But for me, being allowed to imagine a life of my choosing and then having the privilege to pursue that is something I don't take for granted. The challenges are hard enough, but I hope my story shows others that in spite of gentrification, absent parents, and traumatic loss, there is a future, a wonderland, if you will, that awaits them. Right now, we are standing in the middle of McClatchy Way, at the corner of McClatchy and 5th. That's what you see behind me. To my right, we've got the Mills, recent development on some infill. That was empty lot, old factories. And to my left, we got the neighborhood of CV Circle, which has been here for decades. And I think it's really symbolic of the changing Sacramento that we see. You know, we've got a community here that's been super tight-knit, folks who don't have a lot, but they give a lot of love and support to each other. And then we have this new community of Bay Area transplants, empty nesters from Davis, and people who are just brand new to the city who may be unaware of the politics and the racialized history and some of the systemic oppression that's been used to create communities that we see here.
So how are students and families impacted by a changing Sacramento?
They're infected bad because if Sacramento going to change, it's going to look at moving us out of here, moving the family out, and it's just not here. Low income is everywhere.
Our community leaders, they're trying to get rid of this place because they don't appreciate it. They just think it's a black guy in the neighborhood, in the community. People can look on it from the outside and tear it down, but from the inside, you know, it benefited so many people.
If these parents and the kids get moved out and they're in a whole new neighborhood, it's going to affect the parents because these are parents that don't have vehicles. These are kids that don't have family that help them. The family is the school, the people at the school and what's in the community. So if they're trying to like move people around and stuff just so they could demolish low income, it's going to be a big effect because right now we're already having a problem with homeless.
This is like the hub for everybody in Sacramento. Regardless of what neighborhood you come from, once you come to CV Circle, you had an opportunity to see something different. Not, you know, shoot 'em up, bang, bang. That's maybe how you feel when you arrive here, but when you see people aren't about that, people are about their grind here, we're trying to get up out of here, not even get up out of here and leave forever, but get up out here and come back and help out, man, it kind of changes the mentality of a whole lot of people.
So if they come and going through all the low income and telling people that, hey, we're going to put you in a better place when we know they're not, that's going to be a big effect when the family moves with the kids or even senior citizens. And then you're going to come down and just move people out because they want to make Sacramento look like the Mill and Broadway and all this that's going on. They're looking at the money. It's not about the money. What about the people? Who's going to be here for the people?
We have been drowning, put under by currents conceived in the backspace of gentrification, race relations, pastored us backwards, placed us in chains, strange fruit, don't grow on trees, but the scars are still there, pastored us backwards, placed us in chains, strange fruit don't grow on trees. We are broken, put under by currents conceived in the backspace of gentrification, our eyes glassed over, fascinated by fables, conversed in selfish whispers, secrets. They hunt us, skeletons, we have them. In the name of gentrification, segregations, race, relation. We are drowning, put under by currents conceived in the backspace of gentrification, put under by currents that we cannot see, pastored us backwards, placed us in chains. Strange fruit don't grow on trees, but the scars are still there. I am drowning.
I think the first thing to combat gentrification, not just here locally, but all over the world, is to recognize the voices of the people who live in these communities that are changing. We got to move away from that Christopher Columbus syndrome and start to think about the value that the people who are kind of native to these lands, the people who already existed in the community, we got to think about the value that they're bringing with just their being.
So how do we help people see Black and brown communities as assets, like as positive contributors?
So there's no question that the worth and the value is there. We have to see it within ourselves, and we have to invest in our own communities. We can't expect them to do that shit for us, bro. Someone has to step up and make it cool to wear local stuff. And some of the dopest stuff comes from here. And that's our fault in our communities, that we don't have the things that we have because we don't make that of an importance. We need to make property of importance. We need to make knowledge of self and importance. We need to make knowledge of each other's cultures and have understanding. That's what needs to be an importance.
When I look at those communities, I don't see a disadvantage. I see our young people and their parents as extremely advantaged. And that's because they have to deal with scarcity. They have to deal with getting creative and innovative in a moment's notice. And sometimes it's for survival.
I think the youth, especially Black and brown youth, like they run into this consistent welcome mat of oppression, in the sense that they don't see them as assets, even if their job, like say education, is to help uplift and cultivate and develop that asset. For me to understand the value of someone, the closer I am to them in proximity, and not just like physically standing next to them, but proximity to their experiences and seeing the value in what they experience, the ingenious that exists in the perseverance and creativity that comes out of that, I think elevates the possibilities of people seeing them as assets.
I never classify them as disadvantaged, ever. They're highly advantaged because of what these challenges, these added challenges, have the potential to develop in you if you don't look at them as something that deficits you.
Growing up as a kid, I had to pick my spots. Middle of 3 gangs, I had to pick a block. Watching mom on drugs, wishing this would stop. Sleeping on trains, hoping I don't miss my stop. There's a thin line between love and hate, cause you either at the table or on a dinner plate. No fathers, they wanted my sister to pick a race. It was all fun and games until the fist to face. Nowhere safe, 6 years old, bus stop on the corner. I never had dreams of moving to California. Pouring out the cars, wishing that was mine. Big Vert in my ear, helping me keep the time. Guru, Mr. Lift taught me about the struggle. My sister's kind Sharifas, who I looked up to. Patrick's rap in the hood, bring me out of trouble. Things changed when I got off the train at Ruggles. At 12, I was chubby and black, and I was cute. I was learning how to rap.
Okay. So that's the first 12 minutes of the film, and from there some really special things have happened. I had an opportunity to connect with some colleges and universities all over the country. We did a program with the Teachers Ed Master's program at University of San Francisco. There was a joint event with the Educational Leadership PhD program at Sac State, and had an opportunity to have youth poets share their voice, and some panelists who could speak about gentrification and changing cities from Boston to Sacramento, and then in the Bay Area as well. There was another opportunity to talk about Black art, and during the creation creation of Black art during the pandemic, and really like what that means, not just for the artists themselves, but for communities to see themselves and to see artists being resilient during that time. We had that conversation with Aaliyah Sadiq, who you had a chance to see her rise and heal mural in the film. But we were with her and Kiana Williamson from the Sacramento Bee. She's the editor for the Equity Lab, and we had school board member Chinua Rhodes, join us on that panel that was facilitated by the Black Artists Foundry. More recently, had an opportunity to connect with the graduate school education at Harvard University, where they have a hip hop program, where they allow kind of hip hop educators to explore and experiment with the virtual space. And the film had an opportunity to open up their most recent conference that happened about a month ago. And we showcased the film, and then we had this panel conversation around public art and its ability to bring communities together. And what I've realized is that this film has really, and Wonderland as a whole, has really taken on a life of its own. When I started with the album and started writing these stories, really wanting to connect my experience growing up with the experience of others, just looking for that very kind of simple human connection. What I'm realizing is that the topics and the themes that were covered in that writing have now created all of these additional opportunities for me, not to just grow the reach of the film, but for me as an artist, this create a whole new lane and pathway for me to explore, right? It's not just about performing in bars and clubs, which is something I don't really do too much of, but the opportunity to share my creative work in these other spaces has really opened up a lot of doors. So when I think about creative ideas and where they start, right? Maybe it's a painting or a poem, or maybe it's a song, or even a dance like move, and like the thinking about all these viral kind of TikTok dances and all of that that's being created right now. There's so much that's being created and easily digested, and the work doesn't get to really live with people for a long time. And what I mean by that is, not everybody's work is going to be layered like an onion, right? Where you might experience it one time and you might, think about it one way, but then you peel off the next layer, and that's a different experience. You peel off another layer and you start to understand, how that onion came to be. by just digging a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. For me, the opportunity to share the music and have that listening experience, walking people through that, has been a really special thing. Sharing the film with folks and having them get a chance to really see it and hear from communities that have stories that are very similar to their own has been this other way to connect communities and activists together all over the country. And that's been really special. Having some of those conversations in the higher education space has connected campuses from all over the country through this shared experience. So, you just never know how far a single idea will go, right? You don't know whose inspiration that you're holding on to. And you don't know through that inspiration where that will actually end up taking you, right? One of my big goals for 2021 was to do work on both coasts. And now I have the opportunity to do that because of the creative pathways that I've been able to manifest through this work. And that's where what I wanted to share with young artists was, whatever your ideas are, whatever projects that you're working on, right? You have an opportunity to 10x it, right? The idea that you can multiply an idea and not only create economic opportunities for yourself and to grow kind of your business and your brand as a young artist, but the opportunity to really connect deeply with folks by helping them understand the ideas, the concepts, the how to, that whole process behind creating what you've created. And then connecting those ideas and those concepts about the process and in the work itself with people's everyday real lives is a way to really create space in the hearts and minds of other people, right? And when they think about your artwork, it's not just this easily digestible, it's here today and gone tomorrow. And they're looking at you to like consistently just produce what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing. They know that when they come to you, your work has got some real substance in it. And because you've taken the time to develop those layers and to present the work differently, whether that's musically or visually, or maybe you want to present your work with a dance element or component and all of those things, you then have a tremendous amount of opportunity to reach a lot of people, connect them with you, your mission, your ideas, and connect them with each other and build this community around your art. And that community can work to help you be financially sustainable, but that community can also help you create opportunities for yourself, whether that's finding grants or starting a nonprofit, or if you want to go to college, right? Like there are so many avenues for you when you build a really strong community and connection around the things that you value, and things that are just like ideas from your own mind. So with that, I really wanted to pause because I know I've been like talking a lot and I've shared a lot, but I would really like to hear from some of the folks on the call just about some of the things that you're working on right now. And maybe we can, talk about some of the ways that you think that you can grow that based on the information that you've heard me talk about during this time. So I really want to open it up to kind of go back and forth with folks. So if you're on the call, and I can't see everybody right now, but this is a great opportunity, I think, to really share about what you're working on right now. What's the thing that you are really passionate about? And then, how do we grow that? How do we help support that?
I'm currently learning how to podcast and how I would, kind of like publish those podcasts and get people to listen to that.
Awesome. Do you know what your podcast is about? Do you have a theme? Have you started already?
I haven't started yet, but I think I want to do something because I work for the Crocker Art Museum and I'm doing work on environmental racism. So I think I want to do the podcast on environmental racism so I can link my zine and my podcast.
Oh, that sounds like an incredible project that you're working on, right? Because I think about that idea and how there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to really connect not just your guests, but your listeners with your zine and the work that you're doing around environmental racism. Um, do you have like a guest list of people that you'd like to invite onto your podcast?
Right now, I'm not really sure. I'm still kind of learning how to, interview people and how I would go about that. But I think I have like a few organizations I have in mind.
Okay, that's really cool. Yeah, I think the best way to really connect with people is to develop that line of questioning, right? I think a lot of people will like after they talk about kind of the basics like who are you and what do you do, they will immediately jump to like, well, why do you do it, and it's not that people's whys aren't important. I think your why is really important, but what's most interesting to me, and part of the way that I like to ask questions, is I like to understand somebody's process, and I want them to show me what their dedication and commitment really looks like. And when I hear that, folks are spending additional hours, they're going to conferences, they are, doing trips or workshops or trainings and any of that kind of stuff. What is really cool is that those ideas then inspire me to try something new, right? To take a new approach. So, in terms of developing questions for some of your guests, I would try to think about questions that help you understand what their process is when they approach environmental racism. Maybe they are community organizers, and a lot of their work is like one-on-one conversations or organizing meetings and events and stuff like that. Or maybe they're policymakers, right? So like they study the law and they go and advocate, at the Capitol for specific types of policies, or maybe they work with different activist groups to understand how certain policies are impacting the community, right? So I think getting into the weeds with people and understanding their process is a great way to develop that content for your podcast. um, but then that might inspire you or your listeners to get connected with your guests and get involved in the movement. So I think that that's my like 2 cents on how to grow that in particular. There's a couple different platforms that exist out there to help you podcast more easily. I think about StreamYard, right? And I think about Anchor. Anchor is an app that you can use on your phone, and you can send that shared link to anybody, and then you can podcast with people just through your phones, and it can record that entire conversation. StreamYard, I like as a visual podcast and interview platform because you get to see somebody's face. You get to have a face to face conversation, and it's kind of like a broadcast channel that you can control. And then you can broadcast and simulcast is what they call it to like Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube. You can send it to all the in Twitch. You send it all those places at the same time, and you can stream live, or you can record something and then stream it later. And you have the option to do that with video or audio. So those are a couple of tools that I think are really cool. But I think the thing that makes podcasts really good are the questions that the interviewers really ask their guests. So it's great that you have a background and some understanding. You've already done some work around environmental justice, because I think that your questions are going to be really great for your guests. But there are some other groups in Sacramento, like the Red, Black, and Green Coalition. They do some environmental justice work here in our community. And I'm sure that there's some other folks at the state level who you might be able to reach out to as well, who go to work every day here, right here in the Capitol. So those are a couple of ways I think that you can, uh, you know, 10x your idea and have it reach, some larger communities. I think interviewing students at school sites is another way to go. And then position yourself, right? If there's ever an opportunity for you to be a guest speaker to share about some of the things that you've learned from your guests or about podcasting in general, I think that you should jump at the chance to share some of those stories with the larger community, because even if I never get a chance to meet any of your guests, because I know you, I have an insider into environmental justice issues. So over time, you'll have the opportunity to really become an expert at some of that stuff, because you're hearing from all of these other people who are really invested in that particular issue. So there's a comment in the chat, maybe including a segment on the community solutions to the problem. Yeah, like that might be a really cool way to do some of that community engagement with your podcast. So those are a couple of ideas, and we hope they're helpful in growing. Were there other kind of thoughts or ideas that you might have had based on what you heard?
Thank you for all those resources. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I want to toss it out there to anybody else who's on the call. Maybe you're working on something right now and you're thinking about ways to grow it.
I have a similar question on getting young people, especially young people of color and underrepresented like communities that might not have access to Wi-Fi, and getting them, because a lot of places are not open to the public, and so reaching out to the community at the beginning of the pandemic was pretty easy because that's what everybody was doing, but now it's not as easy to get a hold of those youth, and they, for the summer they had to turn in like their Wi-Fi spots and stuff like that. So I'm just trying to figure out how I could reach young people so that they can attend like events like this one in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think the biggest thing is kind of meeting them where they're at. So, there are places where young people kind of have to gather, and sometimes that's in schools. And so maybe it's teaming up with local educators to say, hey, can we present this thing to your class? Can we share with you about Soul Youth and some of our programming? It'll only take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, right? I think sharing or offering even some of the youth that are part of the program as like guest speakers to do some of those presentations, and having young people kind of talk to and interview other young people. Then when they see them in like positions of leadership like that, then it's an opportunity, and they know that, hey, like, this kid who's 14, 15 years old, 16, 17 years old, they came to my school to speak to my whole class about this thing that they're involved in. That seemed pretty cool. I want to get to know them a little bit more. I want to get to know that program a little bit more, right? That's maybe another way to kind of go about it, is kind of meeting them right where they're at, and then doing that. But honestly, the other thing that may also be equally as effective as the face-to-face and relationship building stuff is leveraging some of the social media platforms in the like way and language that young people understand now, right? So I know that like, for instance, TikTok, really popular, really easy for a lot of videos to go viral, but videos will go viral on TikTok for a lot of different reasons, right? It's not just like what's the coolest and latest dance, but sometimes there are how-to videos and short instructional stuff, even like cooking and like new recipes that you'll see done in like a really short amount of time through a TikTok video. And those are some other ways to do some of that engagement. But I think that honestly, it's really just connecting and finding out like what are the ways that these issues that we're discussing in the group that folks are working on, how does that connect with like everyday folks, right? Because not everybody is an artist, not everybody's an activist. So then how do we help them see a lot of these issues that are impacting their lives as like important enough for them to move on when they might be interested in other things? When I was in high school, I was a 3-sport varsity athlete, and social justice was important to me, but I didn't know what social justice was when I was in high school, right? So having people come in to like do those workshops, give me some language So maybe that's a way to kind of go in, provide something that I'm positive is still a gap in our education system, and get young people involved to lead some of those conversations. And I think that through their involvement, through their leadership, they'll be able to kind of work on getting more and more other folks involved as well. So those are my 2 cents. I don't know if that's helpful, Can, for you.
Yeah, super helpful. I'm thinking now maybe there should be some kind of workshop on like, hey, who can teach how to build a TikTok, and then everybody will come on, and then they could teach the other people, or they could all put their ideas together. But yeah, and then the technology part too. I know that we've been going to the city and the education board, the school board, to talk about, ensuring that everybody has access to internet and possibly having internet free, but it's a hard one.
Yeah, no, I know that I know that that's a challenge, and that the city, works to provide some solutions, but sometimes those solutions don't necessarily work for everybody. I know Chinua Rhodes, as a school board member for Sac City Unified, is like really responsive, and is somebody who's been part of the programming and community work and all of that kind of stuff for a long time. So now that he sits in a position of power, has a title and some influence because of that, he might be able to support some of those conversations. I know that there's some folks on city council who want to be able to figure that stuff out too.
Yeah.
But I think that where there are those technology gaps, right? I think that filling the relationship gaps will then mitigate some of those issues, right? Because if we know who those people are and we have direct connections, we can, pick up a phone or have somebody like knock on their door, right? Like that then shifts their ability to then be connected with the community at large, and
Yeah.
we're able to kind of continue to share those ideas despite those barriers that exist.
Yeah, but like you said too, we try to make those connections, and sometimes, with the circumstances of everything, inflation and everything, people are having to move, and then they're almost like embarrassed to let other people know. And, so it's been hard with the pandemic because people have been very private. And so, but yeah, making those connections is really important. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
so
no
much.
problem. Yeah, I appreciate it. I think we got time for maybe one or two more. What are folks working on the call, and how do we help grow that, and how do we support that?
Hey, Paul. Thanks so much for everything. It's so funny because man, I'm almost 57, so I lost friends in CV Circle, like where you came from, in your story, like during the early 80s and stuff. Danced at the African Museum in your video, called DJ White Ice. I was pointing at the natives going, can we have a different experience and connect here rather than do this thing? Comedian came up and I was the only white guy there, right? Perceptively. So lived in Oak Park for 30 years and moved out. And so all your stuff touches me. Like I feel like you've been to like where I was as a kid and everything, and what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
I'm just an ally and trying to figure out, I'm just someone to like help. And, I really appreciate learning about a lot of this environmental justice in Sacramento. Oh my gosh, like that podcast, that's going to be great. I'm working on a couple things. One, line dance, and part of this when I retire is like line dance nonprofit. when I hear about, no, kids wouldn't want to take line dance, which is a whole like learning system and achievement, and you know what I mean, presenting a dance. And then when you see people getting up and doing your choreography, or you put it on TikTok, that could be the next thing. But you know, where we're at now is just, we just want to put it on TikTok and, you know, get a million hits, right? So I'm kind of old fashioned in my thinking sometimes, but the idea was, how do you reach the constituents you're talking about and people who need that, and provide anywhere from connectivity to mentorship is really what it's about, and knowing people in the Bay Area and Oakland and Richmond, you know, to reach out to the community that way. But it's a little old fashioned in the sense of, you know, that's you know, it's a process, right? Dancing with Lady T in your video, oh my gosh, when I saw her, I was like, oh, North Highland Studio, what a beautiful person, you know, and all she does, and going to the day of dance with her, I'm getting goosebumps, just memories, truth bumps, I call them. And so I'm doing that, and I have this other project that's a game, and there's 5 relevant questions, right? And I'm playing around with script writing, and I didn't know this was a youth meeting. I thought it was, you know, storytelling, and I was just like, wow. Yeah. And so I know I'm spacing on the principal's name of Soul Collective. Can you tell me her name?
Estella Sanchez. Yeah.
Estella Sanchez. So I met Estella many years ago, before they moved downtown, I think, you know, and loved the space and what it brought, and always wondering, like, how do I fit in, or going, you know, KRS came in once to the Washington Community Center, and that whole event blew my mind, probably 15 years ago, you know, being in a true hip hop event. But anyway, what I'm doing is developing this game, and when I bring it to what the fruition in a movie, there's 5 relevant questions, right? And I need to work with you to develop those 5 relevant questions about what's going on, the meaningful questions we need to ask, you know, today. That's where I'm at. So it's more like that kind of, when I'm thinking and listening, it's like, I've always thought, how do I ask the relevant questions? You know, I can ask funny ones, and why are we all here? You know, what's the meaning of life? You know, if you could eat lunch with anyone dead or alive, who would that be, and what would you guys eat? But there's 5 relevant questions that will spark people's hearts and minds in a way, and make some movement somehow, and I want to contribute somehow there. You know, so that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, no, that sounds really cool. I think that there's a couple of things, right? I think that if you want to be involved, get involved with like Soul Collective or any of the fam that's like here on this you know, on the Zoom call, I think it's just like showing up. I mean, that's what it was for me. You know, I started at the open mic, and I was just like an artist looking for like my people, you know, and I just, you know, kept showing up, and then volunteering and saying, hey, like, that sounds cool. Can I come out to that? Can I show up at this event or that event? And then just being consistent in your presence. I think that is one of those ways to then continue to connect with folks and build some of those ideas. I think that for this game idea, when you're thinking about those 5 questions, you know, I think about a couple of tools. Actually, this is one tool that I use in you know, this leadership program that I facilitate for, and it's called 4 W's and an H, and it's, you know, who, what, when, where, and how. And the idea is to kind of stay away from those why questions, because why sometimes will get you these opinion answers that don't allow people to be understanding how something kind of came to be. Like, for instance, if I ask a question like, you know, when did you first, you know, when did you first discover your passion, right? That's a different kind of question than like, why are you passionate about that thing? Because the when question allows this person to tell me this story, share some facts about their life, and describe that moment in time when that fire first was ignited for them, versus the why question is now I have to like justify why I'm passionate about something, right? And like what makes me passionate, as opposed to telling you about like the moment or the people or what that experience was like when I finally realized that I was ignited, you know? So I wanted to just offer that to you because I think that's a way to help maybe develop some of those questions and ideas. But then, I'll ask you this. Um, who are some of the people that you'd like to target for that particular game? Is that for K through 12? Is that for adults? Is that just like for everybody, like all ages? I'm curious.
It's really could work for everybody. I was looking at it originally as a team building game, and one vehicle at the time a few years ago I started taking classes at Access Sacramento, and I wanted to kind of introduce it as maybe a corporate game or something like that to get it out there and to get people playing. And but in the movie land, or like looking at like genres, or it could be seniors playing or kids playing, or cultural play. It could be all. It is all of that. I mean, it is, and I have it all kind of mapped out what that could be. But so it could apply to everything, even the pets playing with the voiceovers, down the road. But what's relevant really is where we're at is to really, I want to create the right vehicle the first time, kind of like what you're talking about with your movie, and what I heard when you were speaking about that, making that and putting that together. It's I love your teamwork makes the dream work. And whenever I was working on the small film, I saw that happen, when we had that cohesive team or people that work together.
It sounds like you're talking a lot about like collective effort. And if you ever wanted to, like, if you had time to speak to young people at Soul Collective or a cohort of young people and explain the game to get ideas from a perspective of young folks, and you have something to share, I could probably get a group of friends together, young people, as you could bring it on as a presentation, and then they could give you feedback. And a lot of the youth that we work with have an understanding of like this collective effort or this team building, or and then they're very focused on culture as well, and being inclusive with each other. So that's an idea, if you wanted to connect and maybe talk to some of the youth, let me know.
Yeah, that's definitely an idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Can might have access to your email, Mark, but if you want to leave it there in the chat, we'll make sure that connection happens. And that's the kind of thing, right? It's like when I started with the writing for the album, and I started kind of telling people, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I'd like to have this kind of feel for the music, right? I had to communicate those ideas out to musicians, and then the engineers that I worked with, and all of these different people who were involved. So every time I communicated my intentions, the ideas, they just got clearer and clearer and clearer, till we got to that final kind of product that was created. So you've got a community of support through Soul Collective, and I really recommend kind of taking Can up on that offer, because there's this amazing group of people who want to support folks like you and see you be successful.
Thank you. Yeah, I often feel like I need a spokesperson, but I can do all the backseat and like put it in documentation, just like get the idea out. But pitching or stuff like that, it's a challenge sometimes, or being articulate is what I'm saying, and to the point. But thank you, Paul, and thank you, everyone. Ken, that's my email address right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thing that I've been able to take away from just like this session and just my experience with the album and film overall is that every time I share, like, hey, this is my idea or this is the thing I'm working on, I have an opportunity to hear from all these other folks about their stories and their ideas and the things that are important to them, the things that they value. And just by taking the time to listen, you really hear some like really cool points of connection and some things that, you may not have considered before. So I appreciate y'all for sharing because for me, that's given me some new things to think about and just new ways to like think about presenting the music or the information and how to show up in different spaces. Gamifying, right? The idea of Wonderland is something I don't think I would have considered before. But I think that could be a really cool like concept too. So yeah, there's just all sorts of really cool and creative ideas. And I think that sometimes we will limit ourselves to our own thoughts that we have about our ideas. And I think the more that we share and collaborate and communicate about the things that we hold close to the vest, the more that they can be improved upon and the more that they can grow. So when kind of revisiting this idea of storytelling in general, I think a lot of people think that that's a very kind of isolating thing and something that needs to be done like a writer at a desk, or they go off somewhere in the mountains to like write a book, or anything like that. But really, when you are working collectively, those ideas flow and they change and they grow. So whether you're sharing your personal story or the story of a community that you're in or that you're a part of and identify with, there's just some really, really cool points of connection, but it doesn't happen without this back and forth. And that's the art of it, really. That's like the art of storytelling, is that networking, that connection, and the growth of those ideas. So with that, I just want to say thank you, because this was a really amazing way to spend my Friday evening with you all to dive into these topics and ideas. And I look forward to other young people who want to explore their creativity and see what they want to get involved in. Because we're recording, I want to share my screen really one more time because I want to share with you all just my contact information. So here, that's my Instagram. It's Paul Willis is hip hop. And my email is paulwillisishiphop@gmail.com. It's also my Venmo and my Cash App and all that other good stuff too. But when you message me, you get me directly, right? There's no middleman, there's no manager, there's no record label, none of that stuff. You get me directly. That's a photo of the band and the crew who kind of played on the album and helped to make it possible. And this QR code that you see on the screen, I want to leave that up there for just a few seconds, because that QR code will take you to a Google Drive folder, digitally download my entire catalog. There's all of the albums, a whole bunch of unreleased music, live performance videos, the ebook. There's a folder of quarantunes, which are just like unreleased pieces that I was working on during the quarantine. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that's in there, and I want folks, if you have a chance to kind of see this presentation, you made it all the way to the end. This is how I want to reward you, is by sharing this information. And then when you take the time to really dive in and like find the music and all the other cool stuff that's in there, let me know what you think. If you hear an album or you like a song or anything like that, hit me up and tell me just what that meant to you, because I love to engage with people around the music and around the art form. I create the stuff, but it's meant for this consumption and conversation, right? It's not just like, hey, you listened to the song and then you went on your merry way. I love to talk to you about what you thought about the song and the film and the whole nine. So that's my contact information. That's my gift to you all for the digital download. There's all sorts of incredible stuff that's there. So feel free to check it out. And with that, we'll close up. Thank you so much. I'll pass it back to Naya.
Thank you for sharing this. I appreciate it. Everything that I learned was pretty useful. Yeah, thank you. I'm really appreciative of that.
Thank you.